Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Evolution of Medicine podcast. I'm your host, James Maskell, and I've come to what's obviously a different studio to record this session of the podcast, but you'll see why I've come here. So one of the things that is massive in the evolution of medicine, in medicine adapting to its new environment of chronic disease, is that we want patients to participate in their care. And if patients are actually going to be an active participant in their care, they really need to be able to learn and do what they need to do. And this is new for most patients who have not been active in their care before. And so, we've started to look at throughout the 4 years of the content on the Functional Forum and on the podcast, what are ways that we can create accountability for patients? What systems? So you think about coaching, community. On the last Functional Forum on Monday, we really spoke about how coaching and community, we believe, is going to bring functional medicine to the masses. But a bit earlier this year, we started to take this question of accountability really seriously after we launched our first version of the Practice Accelerator, because this was a group of physician and clinician entrepreneurs who are now looking to be accountable to their own goals, not just helping patients to be accountable to their goals, but they had goals within their practice. They were trying to build a more effective functional medicine practice. And we were starting to think, how could we help people to be accountable without having high price coaching and high price tickets that stop a lot of doctors coming in? And so I really thought to myself, what is the first step here? And the first step for me had to be my own accountability. So as an entrepreneur myself, as someone who runs 2 companies and has a bunch of employees, there are things that I need to do, and I had quite an intense work schedule in the first half of this year. And I found out about a program that my friend was running, and that explains why I'm in this studio. So I'm here with Mark Shapiro, the founder of Winning Weeks. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, James. Honored to be here. I had you on my show, so it's awesome to be on the Evolution of Medicine.
Awesome.
I never would have thought I'd ever be on this show.
Well, look, it's funny because what you're doing is actually super, super relevant to the evolution of medicine, to medicine adapting to this new environment. So let's start with Winning Weeks. I heard about it from a friend. We became friends last year. And what I realized earlier this year is that as an entrepreneur, I was sort of living in my own bubble where I didn't have accountability that I had before when I was either like an employee or I had a mentor or otherwise. And so I joined Winning Weeks back in March. And maybe we can just start by talking about why you started this.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started it first and foremost for myself because I realized there were elements of my life where there wasn't accountability. I know that most people, if they have a job, you might be accountable to your boss to get the job at hand done, a project. If you are in a relationship, you're accountable to your spouse or to your partner to show up and be there for some quality time. If you have kids, you obviously need to be accountable for putting food in their mouth. There's accountability with bills because we got to pay those in order to keep the lights on and in order to keep ourselves safe and fed. And with that said, there's so many additional areas of our life where there is just absolutely no accountability system, like the way we spend our time and making sure that we're spending our time on what's truly most important to us. And without that accountability, it's just like there are freaking distractions everywhere that distract us from whatever really is most important. So like the time is one of them. Another is support in keeping you accountable to who you want to be as a person. And that includes getting rid of thoughts and patterns and habits that no longer serve you, that you want to get rid of. There's not usually someone in your life who is right there who's helping you navigate through those and overcome those. So those are just a few examples of that, which I believe is a major accountability gap. And there's not anything good or bad about it, just within the realm of society today, those just aren't covered. They're not normal things. And most people don't have accountability to living an authentic life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the podcast is all about. We'll have more details of the podcast so you can go check it out for yourself. One of the things that I noticed about Winning Weeks when I saw the marketing, great branding and consistent, but you'd focused on the high performer. And that was like your demographic of who you were looking to work with. What was the choice behind that?
Yeah, the reason behind that is I love to work with people who are committed. And I love to work with people who are their word and who are committed to a life of integrity. And usually when you look at those characteristics, they're people who are successful because they're the kind of people that aren't going to have huge back doors and aren't going to just say things and not do them. People who like take great pride in what they believe in, stand for what they believe in. And oftentimes we want to make a positive impact in the world. And frankly, that's the business that I'm in. I look at so much in our world today, so many of the status quos, and I'm like, why are these things the way that they are? Like, for example, social media. Like, why do we just sit there and scroll endlessly on our feeds and compare our lives to other people's highlight reels? Isn't there another way that we can utilize social media to actually bring ourselves closer together, to better understand each other, to better support each other? So I look at that. There's infinite examples of that in our everyday lives. And oftentimes these are the things that frustrate us individually on a daily basis. So if you're sitting and listening, what are the things, the status quos in society, in the world today, that frustrate you? Maybe in terms of communication with other human beings, and people asking for your time and proper etiquette and what to say to them. There's just infinite opportunities for innovation and enhancement. And I want to live in a world that, we're more connected and that it's a positive, peaceful world. And I love to work with people that have a similar mission and have their own version of whatever that might be, whatever they want to implement.
Awesome. So, you could have chosen to facilitate that journey in a one-on-one coaching relationship as a high performance coach, but you chose to create a structure where it was a peer-to-peer support group. Well, why were the reasons why you chose that? And maybe you can share a little bit of how Winning Weeks works.
Sure. Well, in the spirit of complete authenticity and vulnerability, the one-on-one didn't work as well. And the thing that I learned with that is people are naturally more accountable to 4 or 5 or 30 people than they are just to one other person.
Was there a moment that you worked that out?
When I realized that?
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I did Winning Weeks after doing a lot of one-on-one work, I knew it immediately, because it was easy for someone to jump on a call with me one-on-one and be like, hey, Mark, a lot's been coming up with work. I haven't been able to put the time and effort into my passion project, to my side hustle. Or if someone wants to grow their business, they were like, we've just had so many fire drills. I haven't been able to do it. Or in relationship, there could be, someone saying, well, my spouse is going through a hard time. So, I wasn't able to have that conversation that, was so important to me that I promised you that I'd have last week. And it's just so much easier with one other person to kind of enroll them in whatever your story may be. And not to say that these circumstances and these excuses you're using aren't real things that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But if you really are living in alignment with what's most true and important to you, and you give your word to someone, you honor your word. Now, there's always room to renegotiate. I get things come up. And with that said, it's important to handle those renegotiations before you're showing up for a call and are telling the person, I didn't do it.
So you found something, interesting about the dynamic of people being accountable to 4 other people or 5 other people on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge, huge game changer, together with being a part of something that's bigger than ourselves, is also an opportunity to tap into greater levels of inspiration. Because one of the things that I love about Winning Weeks with a bunch of high achievers and top performers is that we celebrate all of each other's wins.
Yeah.
So when you had big wins in business or in health, it was so cool because other people would hear those and they'd be like, I want to have big wins that I can share and celebrate with others as well. So it's that collective rising tide that comes with being a part of this type of community.
I definitely resonated with that. I mean, that was it. I mean, I could tell about my own experience, but before I do, can you just share what the structure is? What structure you set up for it?
Yeah, well, there's several different elements to the program. The first and foremost is setting powerful declarations for the 8 weeks as to how you want to live your life, what you're committed to working on. And so that's not just, accomplishing, raising your company's revenue by 10% or 10x or whatever that number is for you, but it's, who do I want to be? Who do I need to be? What kind of person do I need to be? What are the behaviors and characteristics that I need to embody that's going to allow me to deliver these results? So maybe that's being a better communicator with investors, for example, or just the people around me, to enroll others in my vision, perhaps to enroll others to help support the cause, to ask for support, to have them help you out with sales, whatever it may be, the issue at hand. So I think it's really important to get clear and to take inventory of all areas of our lives. Not just, it's very easy to get tunnel vision and just focus on work. or just focus on relationship or just focus on health, when what I've learned is it's really that holistic approach to living, which is the magic formula. So that's kind of what we do at the start, is we do this powerful exercise where we take inventory of our lives, the characteristics we want to embody, the things that we want to let go of, whether it's bad habits or patterns or beliefs.
Yep.
And then taking a look at ourselves and maybe fast forwarding the clock 5 years. Like when we see, like if you were to see yourself 5 years from now, absolutely thriving, just accomplishing all the goals, you're exactly where you want to be 5 years from now. Well, who are you then? What is that version of yourself? What do they look like? What are their patterns and habits? How do they show up in the situations that are currently challenging for you today?
Yep.
Like when we run and hide or take flight during a scary situation, when we bite our lip and don't speak up. Those are just a few examples. But if you look at yourself 5 years from now, it's a great invitation. All right, who is that person thriving?
Yep.
I'm going to be that person today.
That's great.
And every moment's a new moment to choose who we want to be. So that's a big part of the foundation of Winning Weeks, is really getting clear on what our best selves look like and committing to that today. So both in the behavior and then the actions. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece is the weekly team calls, which I divide everybody up into teams of 4, and there's a facilitator every week. And we set our intentions of who we want to be in the given week, whether it's like I want to be confident, I want to be aggressive, or I want to take good care of my health this week. And then the specific action items, like I want to go to the gym 4 times for at least an hour each time, or I'm looking to create 5 new professional relationships this week, and here are the list of 5 people that I'm going to reach out to. And then the other piece of these calls is the feedback from the other people on the team. And James, you are amazing at giving feedback. You're someone who speaks your truth boldly and confidently in a very loving way as well. And, we can only see the world through our own eyes. And oftentimes other people aren't giving us that reflection of as to how we're showing up to them.
Yeah.
So that feedback is really valuable. And I find that in Winning Weeks, it's a great way to practice speaking our truths and giving that authentic, vulnerable, loving feedback to the other people on our team, which is so valuable for them, but it's also really valuable for the person who's practicing giving that feedback, because then you're just going to be stronger when you're having those tough conversations with, someone you're romantically involved with, or during a business negotiation or whatever it may be.
That's one of the things that hit me going through the process, is that I felt that all aspects of it were valuable for everyone.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, my 12 minutes on the call that was valuable for me, and then the rest of the time, like I was just waiting for it to end.
Yeah.
It was like I was very, with your guidance, very clearly focused on on providing and holding space in a really an effective way for the other people who are there. And that was really valuable, because I find myself doing that. Like I have employees, I have team that I'm, trying to work with and connect with, and be able to have, listening as an active habit was really powerful. And just to throw in there, like my accountability to goals that I have had, internally, and maybe my accountable to my wife hasn't really like worked out in certain ways.
Yeah.
But like this was just being accountable to a random group of strangers, and it really worked. Like I went to Barry's boot camp more than I've done. Like I made serious progress with the businesses and had some big wins in that time period. Not all related to that, but certainly a part of it. And, it's interesting, that you mentioned just the way that you set it up, because I felt like, 8 weeks was enough time to like change some habits as well. It wasn't like a 2-week accountability group, and it wasn't like an unending accountability group, but there was a certain fixed amount of time where I was executing, and then that came up to like the end of May, and then I was on vacation for a bit, and it just really it was a manageable time to like put the pedal to the floor.
It was an honor to have you in the program, James. And you mentioned something that I want to kind of shine a magnifying glass on, and that was, you've had health goals, exercise type goals that you discussed with Rachel. So there was an agreement in place, and for whatever reason, it was tougher to have that accountability. And what I've really learned is that our friends and our family, it's not their job to keep us accountable for living authentically. They have their own roles that they fill in our lives, and it's not really fair to put the onus on your parents or your brother and sister or your spouse to make sure you're accountable for absolutely everything, because then they kind of, become a babysitter to some extent. And I think everyone can relate. Like, you make an agreement with, you have a powerful business lunch or with a friend, and you both decide you're going to commit to doing something across any area of your life. Maybe it's getting a gym membership or whatever it may be. And then you might talk to the friend or whoever it is that you made the agreement with maybe once, but they're not going to be like there every step of the way. And I think part of that is it's just not their job. And then without kind of having some skin in the game, putting a little money down to like really commit to something, then it usually is going to kind of just not going to happen over time. And then the other piece is, as human beings, we're not so great at asking for support. And what I've learned is that oftentimes people feel like they're a burden on somebody else if they're asking for a favor. And that might be totally independent on what the other person who they're asking, like that person would be maybe thrilled to go and, give someone a ride somewhere to help someone move.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's just that fear of being a burden on somebody else that we don't ask. And when we do that, we actually rob other people the ability to want to give. So that's like a piece of it. And then I think we also, we don't want to look weak, and oftentimes asking for support. I think there's a false sense in our society today that means that there's weakness, and that's total BS, because we're human beings. We have so many challenges every single day, and we could all use more support in our lives. And that's one of the valuable lessons that I've kind of learned through Winning Weeks. And a big part of the program is like people just being real with each other and saying, these are the things that are really working, and these are the things I want to celebrate, and these are some of my pain spots right now. These are some of my challenges. And then by expressing those things, we're able to ideate and help each other come up with solutions.
Yeah, well, look, it obviously had, quite an impression on me. One, because I realized that it worked really well in a way that things haven't worked for me in other situations, but also because it's so on brand with the evolution of medicine. Right? We've been all about community all the way through. It started as a community in New York. We've got 500 communities of doctors around the world. We put people into communities up until now. So, I spoke to my partner, Gabe, and I was like, look, dude, this is awesome. We need to like harness this, because also what we'd seen is that the other options for practice development in our space were typically, you got a coach with it, and that coach was very expensive. And so you're looking at like a 6-figure price tag for accountability and support and training in this space. So we decide to, our experience, we decide to do an experiment. So we got all the people who are in our practice accelerator, and we said, hey, do you want to be in a 5-week accountability and an 8-week accountability group and just see what happens? And I think we had about 40 people from our community put their hand up. So I want to tell you about our experience of doing it, so that you can tell me whether this is typical or not.
Okay.
So first of all, almost everyone wrote that it was an amazing experience, right? And I think that one of the things that they were surprised is that everyone was just as sort of lost at sea as them, right? I think everyone feels that all the other doctors or all the other people doing functional medicine or all the other insert whatever you are have got it together, and I don't. My inner world is turmoil, but these guys have it together. And
I think we can all relate to that.
I think we can all relate to that. So that was the first thing, is like, I think people realizing within the first appointment, oh, everyone's kind of just like me, and we're all fumbling our way through to try and make success. So that is typical.
Very typical.
Okay. So that was the first thing. And it was really amazing for the people who had that realization. It's so freeing to realize, like, you're not the dumb kid, you're not the dumb doctor, you're just trying to do something. Like, even in functional medicine, this is new for everyone. This didn't even exist 25 years ago. It's not like there's only right now are we starting to see the best practices of how to do this. So there's been plenty of fumbling. I think that. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that a certain percentage of the groups crushed it. had one appointment at the beginning with our facilitator, Nicole, who's amazing. And this, I have to say, side note, Nicole in our community, in one of my employees, stepped up in a significant way to run this whole thing, and like went from being someone in the company who was doing sort of like the entry level stuff to someone who's like a really important part of the company, because she took responsibility for this in a really exciting way. She has a background as a coach, really liked the idea, and really stepped up and nailed it. But she found like, so some groups did their thing, had their first meeting, and then continue strong to this day, meeting weekly, doing the system, showing up for each other, and getting really incredible outcomes. Some groups, not showing up, didn't show up, didn't do the right thing. And what we found is that, it was a mixture of the personalities, but also the timing. If people's meetings were in the morning on a Monday or Tuesday, very successful. In the evening, never successful. That kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how you found to organize it, and if this is what you'd expect from a group of ragtags trying to pull off the same kind of thing for the first time.
Yeah, I definitely advocate for early in the week intention setting, because there's a fresh start. It's symbolic. And it's a great time to check in with oneself and to really get grounded and be like, all right, this is my intention for this week. This is the way that I want to spend my time, whether, looking at through the lens of work, looking at the lens of relationship, health, time for self-care. Because like I said earlier, it's really about that holistic approach, which at the end of the week is going to make us feel fulfilled and balanced and feel like, we made the most of our time versus, running around with our heads cut off. So I definitely find that beginning of the week check-ins are really, really powerful. And with that said, just like a once a week intention setting for some people, declaring their goals up front for the week is going to be all the accountability they need coming into that column next week. They declare it, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And that's all that they need, because they don't want to show up the next week and say that they didn't accomplish X, Y, and Z. Well, there's a lot of other people, and I'd say a greater percent of people will set their goals. And if they're not checking in with their goals every single day, they're going to get lost in the noise of life. Yeah. And then they're going to show up on the next week and be like, either not accomplishing them at all or waited till the last second, and then we're just trying to go for the buzzer beater to accomplish all their goals. So what I found is that there needs to be, for each person, like you need to kind of have on as tight of a glove as it's going to serve you in terms of what's going to get the job done, so you have enough accountability. So some people, just declaring it is enough. Other people, declaring it and maybe getting, a reminder on their phone every day of what their goals or intentions are.
Yep.
And then there's other people who need their handheld a little bit more, where there's like, they need to have a buddy who they're checking in with, maybe once a day or even multiple times a day to make sure like, all right, I am utilizing my time best. And in that last scenario, that sounds like, wow, that could be like a lot of time. And that's actually not part of winning weeks. We don't have like people checking in with each other like 10 times a day, because it's for high performers who need or require like a little bit less structure because they're already making things happen. But what I find is that by checking in and like setting those goals every week, whatever time you're investing in that, maybe it's 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, you're going to save so much time because you're living in alignment with what's most important to you versus getting lost with the wind all the time.
In the medium term, it's going to save you a lot of time. I mean, one of the things that we talk about in the Practice Accelerator is you have to set aside 3 to 4 hours. If you're not going to be self-employed and you're going to be a business owner, and that's a real big shift, especially for doctors and practitioners, because, if you had a painting business, if you started a painting business and I paint houses, how many jobs before I'm no longer doing the painting and I've actually just arbitraged another painter, right?
Yeah.
But in medicine, you train for so long to do it, you feel like you should be doing it. And so the gap between entrepreneur and self-employed is a bit bigger. And so we're trying to help people to move across that gap. And the first thing we say, you got to spend 4 hours a week at least working on your business, not in the business. And this seems like the first most important hour, because you're going to be accountable. And then those other 3 hours, you're actually focusing on those things rather than admin stuff that could be done by someone else. And it could be something could be outsourced, leveraging your time in the right way.
Definitely.
And so it's setting the use of those hours effectively.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for time blocking. So with that approach, I think is a brilliant approach, that if you're looking to grow your business and grow your practice, to set a couple hours at the start of the day and to just put that into your calendar. So you can't have patients booked during that time.
Absolutely. Well, cool, dude. Well, look, I just want to share that this has been super valuable. And also, thank you on behalf of our doctors who are in our Practice Accelerator, because the vast majority of them either are crushing it now on a much bigger level, or have learned things about themselves that help them to realize what kind of support they will need to get there, or maybe have come to a realization that I'm not an entrepreneur and I want to go and work for another doctor because I'm really focused on the clinical side and this is not for me, but they've learned a lot. So for everyone who's watching at home, check out winningweeks.com. If you consider yourself a high performer and you'd be part of Mark's crew, you can check it out and you can sign up. He's got his next intake coming in October. I think it's $1,000, right, for the 8 weeks?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You know what? Actually, it's this is going live on Tuesday, so it is $1,250.
$1,250. So that's that. And, in our Practice Accelerator, part of the reason why I wanted to do this thing too is because this is included now, in our Practice Accelerator. And this is something that we would love for, what we're trying to do is make building a successful functional medicine practice accessible for everyone. So for $3,000 for a lifetime, you're in the Practice Accelerator. So I hope that you join one of these programs and get into a place where you can actually start to take action on becoming who you're going to be in 5 years. I thought that was a great way of putting it. So, check it out. Check out Winning Weeks. Before we go, Mark, I have to ask you, it's a big week here because your TEDx talk came out.
Yes.
I loved it. I had the opportunity actually to check it out before it came out in a demo.
It was not nearly as good during that practice round.
I thought it came across really well. So
thank you.
Maybe just, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'll put links in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
Why did you choose that topic, and why do you think this is relevant for our audience too?
Yeah, well, I'm very passionate about social media. As a business owner, I have used social media a lot to, make posts, to share what I'm up to. And, I'm also someone that wants to create positive change in the world. And we have this incredible platform available to us where I think 2 or 3 billion people in the world are on social media these days.
Yeah.
So an incredible opportunity to unite and connect. And when I learned while researching for this TEDx talk that the average person checks their phone 100 times a day and spends over 4 hours on it. Now, not all of that is on social media, but social medias are a deep well of distraction. Yeah. And to me, instead of scrolling endlessly and comparing our lives to other people's highlight reels, how can we utilize this technology to actually better understand each other and support each other? And if you're on social media, you probably see a lot of people just gloating, sharing all the highlights of their life, or just kind of watching people from afar. And, I believe that we have this incredible technology and that we're only in the adolescent phase as to how to best utilize it. And I encourage people to kind of lean into it. And one thing that I learned, the quick backstory is that my dad passed away from Alzheimer's after an 18-year battle last year. And I got so many messages on Facebook. I'm like, holy moly, I felt so touched by all this love. And I didn't feel like just writing thanks or clicking like was going to do it justice in terms of expressing how I really felt to them. So I started sending personalized voice memos to a lot of these people in response. And it was therapeutic for me to speak vulnerably and to share my truth with other people. And it was such a valuable experience that I'm like, how can I implement this into a daily ritual? And I started sending every one of my Facebook friends a personalized video on their birthday. And this is every single one of my Facebook friends. So these are even the random people that haven't been in my life in 10 to 15 years.
Ex-wife, ex-girlfriend's family members, right?
Them too. I've had some awkward ones where I'm sending a video to someone who I maybe went on one date with several years ago and was kind of awkward. But, I hold true to that vision that, and that commitment to doing that. And the results have been astounding. 70% of people will respond to me. And I'm not asking for anything. I'm just sending somebody some love on their birthday. And, you have to check out the talk. But, I realize that the reason why this is so impactful, it has nothing to do with birthdays. And it's all about human connection and the fact that we all want to be seen, valued, and loved. And there are really simple ways that we can do that with social media. And we were talking about winning weeks, and I'm getting a little long-winded here, but a big part of it is vulnerability. And if you're sitting at home listening, you might have thought to yourself, like, why would I want to open up and share all these goals and things that are going on in my life with people who I've just met?
Yeah.
And, the reality, in my opinion, is, as you alluded, we all have challenges. We all are going through like a similar human experience. But when we are not open and honest with other people have no idea what we're going through. They have no idea how to support us. And I'm a big advocate that if we're willing to be open and honest, then we'll better understand each other. And if we better understand each other, we know how to provide value for one another. And when we know how to provide value for one another, we can collectively lift each other up in a way that more people are thriving. And, this is where it ties into medicine is, if we're living, healthy, if we're feeling happy, fulfilled, connected, hopefully, that will be a great way to aid functional medicine.
Well, it is actually, and it speaks to a big thing. In fact, right at the beginning of the podcast, we have a TED Talk about physician vulnerability.
Oh, okay.
Because one of the big things that you have to think about is that, like, the patient is ultimately extremely vulnerable in medicine, right?
Yeah.
They're divulging their health history to, like, a stranger. The doctor might not be a stranger otherwise. And the relationship has always been that the doctor is not vulnerable at all, does not tell them anything, does not share, no emotions. They even train not to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But what that leads to is a lack of trust, because people don't trust when there's no vulnerability. And especially when, doctors have a history of taking kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies, when they have a history of doing like kind of shady stuff, that there's a sort of a thing that there needs to be more vulnerability from physicians to say, what they really feel and share. There's an amazing TED Talk on it. And ultimately, we need trust to be able to facilitate behavior change. People aren't just going to change because you tell them to. They're going to trust you. And Terry Walls talks about this in her group visits, is that the person who's gone through the process is much more likely to inspire someone to change than the doctor just saying, like, you've got to change, because there's no trust, there's no vulnerability. You don't know if this person has had to make the changes that you're asking of them. And so, this is actually the evolution of medicine. What we're talking about is about creating trust at scale, creating, vulnerability in groups and accountability. And, there's not enough professionals to go round to do this. And so the power of community, the power of peer-to-peer is really what's going to, facilitate that. And so I also salute anyone who's trying, taking action in some direction to learn how to harness the power of peer-to-peer interaction, vulnerability, and support, because ultimately I think it's the most powerful tool that we're going to have.
I totally agree, and I can't believe it's not actively taught in schools.
Yeah. So we're changing that. I think they're definitely some of the more progressive education organizations in our space are starting to talk about what does a therapeutic relationship look like. Certainly the group visit is opening up that conversation. But thanks so much for being a great guest on the Evolution of Medicine podcast. The least medical person we've ever had, maybe not. I'd have to look.
I'm gonna have to put this on my resume. This is amazing. Instant credibility.
Absolutely. Well, look, this has been a great session. Check out the one and only podcast. Check out winningweeks.com. If you want to be part of our community at the Practice Accelerator, you can go to goevomed.com/brochure. Check out the testimonials from the doctors who have been in the part of the accountability group. Come and join in. If you're a high performer and you're headed for great heights, then I would highly recommend Winning Weeks. I've done it. It works. Get in there and do it. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next time.